I heard that. Good morning to you. I wanted you on my heat. Good morning. I'd like to get started with our February 6th Protection Board meeting. First order of business is reviewing the minutes and approving them. Any discussion about the minutes? Any questions, changes?
I move to approve as submitted.
Second.
I'll second it.
All those in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Minutes are approved. First item is old business 420 Woodward Boulevard. Yes, we did.
Quite what you wanted. I guess for him, I said, my contractor wasn't available, turns out he was at SWAT school. And I called a different company, had them come out, look at it, and estimate on the letter. And so I didn't want to pay for the letter. And I think that the tree, this is just, I don't know how tall the trees, but I'm thinking if it's gonna break, it's gonna break at the weak spot, right, the weak link in the chain. And there's something we can do on that. On the tree.
Well, there was, well, sure it does. It responded to mechanical damage or some other sort of damage some time ago, and we don't know what it is. And that's the crux of the question. The other question, of course, is to concern both for you and for your neighbor, for if it did fall at that point, that it potentially could hit his property. It's a close call.
You know, so
Right, I understand that.
stuff is insured.
Right.
Well.
Okay.
Well, yeah,
Any thoughts, everybody?
yeah, my honest opinion of that tree is not going to fail. I have not seen anything that causes me to think that tree is going to fail. The growth at the bottom is that, but I didn't see any evidence of decay behind it or any evidence of decay in the root system. And the arborist who wrote the letter did not identify any issues like that. There's a very full crown, which is a good thing. That's not a detriment. The curvature in the stem is because of the way it's growing where the sun was. So I don't see any need to remove the tree, and I encourage you to keep it. However, you have been very, very diligent and patient and come back and I don't want you or anyone to think that the town has been jerking you around or leading you astray. So with a great deal of reluctance, I would move for approval to remove the tree, though I don't think it should come down. And I'm hoping that your good reasoning will allow you to keep the tree. But if it needs to come down, then I would vote for that approval.
Found that you wanted to see, who's at SWAT school, and thought maybe let's just wait and watch this thing again. The same principle. I'm inclined to feel the same way as Mr. Burbidge, and the only thing I would add is if we do recommend under those conditions that you remove the tree, that it be mitigated for, and that means planting replacement tree or trees. To compensate for its loss. And again, and while we do that, of course, is to perpetuate an urban forest, or at least a facsimile thereof, so that with a total loss of tree was 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 disappear. Well, the website has a list of all of that. The town arborist can suggest that we're talking about canopy trees, oaks. And not, pines wouldn't qualify, but you might want to plant a pine tree.
Or citrus trees in the backyard.
Well, this wouldn't be a canopy tree. It'd be like an oak or something that would be an upper elevation tree that compensated for the loss of the crown, high up. But our arborist can consult with you on those. But if you would entertain that, the thought that Ms. Burbidge had, let's think about it, and maybe that arborist can come say, you have nothing to worry about. And that would be a better ending.
My contractor said he told me that we missed each other. and
Right.
Asked the other people to come out, so I continue to let them.
Oh, okay, okay, you're not going to use them.
I'm not gonna.
Okay. Anybody else?
No, I think you covered everything.
So there's a motion on the floor that, if I understand it, to allow for removal of the tree if all of the thought process point that way, and if so, to mitigate for that tree on a basis that I think I want staff to help recommend the number of trees and not necessarily exactly what they are, but that we can certainly help with what would qualify for mitigation. Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor of the motion to remove the tree with mitigation, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next order of business. 114 Hutchinson Lane. Got backup, do you?
This is my first time, so I'm not sure how it's all works.
Well, we know you have 2 trees that you wish to be removed, and we simply maybe have a little bit. I see the reason here, maybe you can expand on that just a little bit.
Yes, so as we've lived in that home for 3 years and we have slowly been clearing, it was very overgrown brush. We had a couple other trees removed in the past. But I wanted to plant a vegetable garden. That was one of the reasons, and bring more sunlight into our yard. And there is kind of just mold, mildew growing, and I'm wanting to just bring more sunlight for exposure on the house, fences. And those 2 trees, they're not really, they're kind of in the further back of the property, so we don't see them too much. But they do block a significant amount of sunlight in the afternoon, that I would like to capture for our yard and help with, just more sunlight for my children, myself, and, various yard projects that I would like to talk about. So it's kind of my reason.
Okay.
And one is just kind of unattractive as well, so,
You're referring to the river birch in the
Yes.
back,
yeah, yeah.
pretty much about as out of the way in your yard as it can be.
Yes, definitely.
And leaning into the pond as well.
Yes, it is. Oh, yeah.
All right.
That's Get her comments in there. Have you thought about maybe trying to thin out the tree any, especially the oak, not so much the river birch, and provide more light that way?
Well, it has a couple similar trees next to it that I was going to also thin out this spring. But, I did want to omit the oak, if I'd like to, just because it's not one that we really pay attention to, or it's not super, and it's just not in our span of view or anything either. It's just not one that I'm particularly fond of, but I'm open to that, yeah.
Okay.
And replacing the trees as well. I'm open to that too, if I need to do that.
You talk about mitigation.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Any other observations, thoughts?
Yeah, it appeared to me, looking at the way the direction that the sun travels from east to west, that that lot, and you'd have to correct me if I'm wrong, it just looked that way this time of year,
Yeah.
there was a good bit of sunlight that hit the yard up until midday and a little bit after, and then as it started to set, then some of the trees might shield some of the view. But I think, given what I know about what promotes mold growth and that sort of thing on homes, that those trees are not causing any problems. If there was one tree that might be shielding so much sun that it would promote mold growth, and I don't think it is, but if it was, it would be that very gorgeous tree, which is a focal point in your yard. So my recommendation would be if the problem is, if the request is because you want to eliminate mold growth and that sort of thing, would be to do some good quality pruning and see what happens. And I think you're going to be, as far as mold growth is concerned, you'll be satisfied. And I also think you'd probably get enough sunlight to help with a vegetable garden. If anything is going to shade a vegetable garden, it's going to be that very prominent tree in the center of the yard, I think.
Right.
So that, therefore, I don't see a need to remove those trees personally.
What about the birch? I mean, if the oak is more desirable to keep, what about the birch in the far back by the pond?
Well, if it's not, I figure that would be less of a challenge to the sunlight than the oak tree. And I agree thoroughly about, the oak tree could stand some selective pruning inside, particularly with that one codominant branch comes more to the front and has a damaged top to it and everything. That tree could be worked on for sure, but it seemed to me that let's look at some pictures, maybe if there are some. The river birch just really seemed like it's just out of the way.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
I mean, it's out of the way and it's not, so as an impediment to sunlight, I see it has, I think it has much less of a function than does the willow oak. And I'm inclined not to really want to remove that because, again, if we remove that tree and have you mitigate for it, where are you going to put it? You're going to put it in the middle of the yard. And it's going to be, and it has less issues than does the oak tree, because it really doesn't need any pruning. It's a very healthy, it's leaning, but it's leaning into the pond and its roots look solid as a rock. So I'd be less inclined to even want to do anything with respect to removal of that tree than with the oak tree.
Okay.
And if you prune, you know that you need to limit the amount of pruning that you do to 20%, no more than 20%
Roughly
pruning.
20%.
Okay.
What was the size of the river birch?
I wasn't able to determine an accurate.
Multi.
Thrown up around
Yeah.
it. It's hard to do.
Right, but at least 20 inches, maybe probably more than that. Hard to say.
Let's say probably close to
15.
if I were to.
So, if you mitigated for that, you're talking 15 inches of tree that you'd have to replace in your yard somewhere. So that's quite a few trees that would go back in the yard.
And you're trying to eliminate and get more sunlight. We're talking about planting more trees.
Yeah, well, just, I guess in a different location would be more desirable. Is that how that works? You put a new tree in the same spot, or just? It
Oh,
just
no,
have to be somewhere?
no, not the same spot.
You can go anywhere on the property.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and truthfully, I just don't like it. It's an eyesore to me too. And my children play in the pond. They're around it. I want more openness to be able to see them at the pond. I have 4 children, and so they all kind of fuss around, and so just having clear view of them.
Is the pond in your property?
it's the Gadsden Pond. I am like up one.
Salona,
Yes,
really?
yes, sir. So
Okay.
I think that's how that works. And I think that's what was on the deed for our home. So, but yeah, so, and that was another reasoning for the bird.
Any other thoughts?
Well, again, I think Danny kind of touched on this, but that birch over there on that side of the yard really helps protect, the children playing or whoever out there in the yard and that, from that afternoon sunshine. So I think it has a good quality there for that.
Yeah.
Because I know that sun can be brutal during the summertime in the afternoons especially. Yeah. Yep.
There was a nice shady corner. And, we are trying to protect those kind of things if
Yeah.
there's nothing else wrong. And so as long as you understand where we're coming from. And so, do you want to make that in the form of a motion then?
Yeah, and just before I make a motion, perhaps you could look at clearing some of the shrubs and brush that's in there, and that would give you the clear view, to look at the children. So, yes, I move that, we not approve the removal of these two trees.
I second that.
The motion is seconded. Are there any more questions, discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you for your time.
They-
Next order of business. Mr. Bishop on 604 West Carolina Avenue.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
It's a beautiful day.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
The spy balloon is gone.
That one is.
Yeah, that one is. I have a number of trees that I'd like to have removed. And I understand about the elm tree. I was able to remove that, you called it
Asiatic jasmine.
Asiatic jasmine. Chinese already here. Anyway, I got my pickup truck and I pulled where y'all could inspect it, but I took my little 8-pound sledgehammer and I hammered all around. I couldn't hear any hollers, the echoing of the holler. Or I couldn't knock any of the bark off, which means to me, I'm not an arborist, but I worked for the Federal Land Bank for 37 years and I inspected trees and bored trees and cruise timber and that kind of
Oh.
thing. That tree is not dead, but it is a yoke tree,
Mhm.
which makes it inclined to catch more wind, the heavy wind, up high wind. I'm talking not just the breeze under it. It will catch the wind, and I think that tree has caused more damage to my wife's vehicles over the past 5 years. The limbs snap out of it. And I don't know if that's a characteristic of an elm tree, that it has weak branches at the nodes where the limbs come on. But I think you guys looked at that elm tree and you saw the dead hangers that were hanging
it-
up
it
there
needs
from
some-
previous windstorm.
It needs some pruning up there. Sir, it needs some work.
It needs a good trimming.
Good.
But my concern is if I trim it and you leave all the weight on one side when it's got a yoke on it like that, 2 stems coming out of one stump, will that not overweight it to one side and cause it to crack down the middle and fall?
Danny?
Not necessarily. No, I'm saying this without looking at it and picturing it. But no, not necessarily. If there's no decay in it now, the one side having more limbs than another is not going to, it's not going to cantilever and pull it over. It wouldn't do that even through time. And one of the reasons I wanted to have the vine removed is so we can look at those crotches and see if we think there may be decay in there so that we could recommend its removal. But no, to answer your question, the answer I think is no. It wouldn't pull it over.
But we did agree to come back again.
Yeah, well, you can, I mean, I don't know if that's necessary or not. I mean, if I can have permission to trim it severely, when I say severely, take all those limbs and dead limbs and everything that's,
If you're taking off dead, there's no problem with that at all. And as long as you get someone good up there in the tree who can at least avoid cutting too much where it's not dead and create the imbalance that you're concerned about. I don't recall if one side of that was worse than the other. I believe the one toward more toward the
have you
house.
seen those guys, how they work?
There's good ones and there's bad ones, I might promise you.
See, they won't climb a dead limb. That's called a dead man's tree.
No, they will bring
They
in,
will climb a live limb and then they'll cut that live limb off as
Well-
they hang up there and
right, but
there will be a portion of that dead limb that's live next to the trunk. So I'm just asking to remove it, but, that's the one problem. I'd like to take them one at a time. My Bradfords, y'all have no problem
Right.
in moving
Right.
the Brad.
Right, right.
Have no problem in removing the water hole.
we didn't really talk about that too much, but we can. The little water oak that's next to the pool.
It's just started dropping acorn.
Well,
We said okay to the cherry.
Pardon?
We said okay to the cherry tree.
I'm hard of hearing, man. I can't.
cherry.
That little cherry tree, the little,
cherry.
yeah, that's no problem removing that one.
Okay.
So you're talking about 4 trees now. That we are,
Well, no, I was talking about I think it's 3 sweet gum
Right, and one pine tree.
and 1 pine. Yeah, that's it. That's all of
Well, just, the sweet gums, all three of those are in good health. And, we're only going to suggest removal of anything that's disease, dying, or or safety issue. So, I just don't think we can remove those sweet gums at this time.
when I said 4 trees, those were 4 that we had, talked to you about
Yes,
approving.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
3, Bradford pears and the cherry, that making 4.
And
So
there was
tag
1
it up.
pine in there, I think.
Right, there's a pine, and again, it's a young tree, I forget what the diameter is, 10 inches?
Yep.
And, there's nothing wrong with the tree.
It's just a pine tree, that's all.
I know, but, I work, with-
I know
as
the
you
pine-
work for the land banks,
It's sacred to Somerville.
that's right, Flower Town and the Pines, and I've worked at a pine forest company for not quite 37 years, but close to 30. So, not that that should enter into this, but nevertheless, it's a healthy tree and we just can't.
Well, to make y'all feel comfortable, you want to come back. I don't think it's necessary for y'all to come back because that tree is not dead.
No,
And it is
but
not-
being
it's
dead on,
not- Any of the bark is not slipping.
I hate that you used the 8-pound sledge on it. You might,
Well, I didn't hit it. I did the 8-pound sledge
I know,
has a little short handle.
I have
about that
one that-
long.
it can do some
When I was,
damage anyhow.
when I was a young man, my dad would always say, son, get me a bigger hammer. I figured I'd fix that 8-pound sledge for my dad.
Okay.
I tapped it, you know how you could hear it echo?
Yes,
I think you were hitting it with a rubber mallet.
Right.
This is rubber.
But I hit it with a steel mallet. I was steel.
Rubber's kind of.
Well, I think you've gone through all the trouble of removing the vines from that tree. I would like to go back out and take another look at it
Okay.
myself. I really would.
See, we don't mind going back.
I'm just saying, when you look down, I'm not familiar enough with it. When you looking down in that crack
Mhm.
of where they split.
and now we can see it clearly with the vines
When
gone.
you get a heavy back wind or whatever, I don't know if y'all were here in town when, all the weather stations got on TV and they say, oh, the storm is over. You can go outside and resume your business. And then we had that back wind.
That was Matthew, yes.
And it was for 1 minute there, it about
Oh.
destroyed that one particular tree.
I remember that well.
But anyhow, I'm just worried about my grandkids and those hangers. And, the insurance companies, they rather pay for the death of a child than take care of a problem before. And that's the most idiotic thing I ever heard in my life is this insurance companies. I had a tree at 305 Rutherford Street, the largest tree in Somerville. 305 Rutherford, largest tree in Somerville. And my neighbor wanted me to cut it down my entire life. I wanted to keep that tree so bad because it was a part of the history of Somerville. And she eventually made me cut it down. She did. And what they did was, I'm trying to think of the boy that worked for the Audubon Society. I would have figured he'd have been on my side. Because the Audubon believes in letting the tree stay up there no matter what, how long until
Right.
God takes it down. Well, he said, and what they said was that they would have to get the town to take it down if I didn't take it down. And they would bill me for it. And I said, well, I'm not gonna pay it. They said, we'll take a lien out against you and your property and sell your property if you don't cut that tree down. And that was a tree that I was fighting for to maintain. The limbs on that tree as big as that elm tree in my yard now.
Must have been a live oak.
Wasn't live, it had a hollow center.
I think it was a
only had
water oak, wasn't it?
water oak. You know,
Okay.
Somerville's notorious for
Yes,
those
it
water
is.
oaks, and they rot out from the inside out.
I got
And
one.
then all of a sudden they just crack over. But anything y'all can do for me, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm not mad or anything like that.
Well,
We
I think-
appreciate your cooperation.
Yeah, and understand your concern. I really do, especially when it comes to grandchildren. But we'll be glad to go take a look at it again.
Okay, so y'all gonna make a motion that can I remove the other ones or I need to wait until y'all look again?
Are we permitted to split a tree removal request and grant removal of some trees only, because we're gonna still go back and look at some others?
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it between two separate symbols.
Okay, I move that we permit the removal of the Bradford pears and a cherry tree, which wasn't even 8 inches, was it? And a cherry tree, right? And we will look at the remainder of the trees when we return in a month.
Okay, thank you so much. I
Do I
appreciate
have a
all your
second?
time.
Second.
All those, any more discussion? All those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Thank you, Mr. Bishop.
Thank you.
Next order of business is four four seven zero Ladson Road.
Yes, sir.
I'm good. How are you?
Good morning.
Morning. Michael, my engineer, couldn't be here today, but I'll be or I am the owner trying to buy the lot and develop it. It's the out parcel in front of the shopping center down there, right in front of the cinema.
We went there.
Yeah, okay. So the two or three pines, I think 3 pines that, are on the buildable part of the property. So unfortunately, SE&G, well, not SE&G anymore, but anyway, they got an easement along Benton's Lodge Road. So a good portion of the property isn't usable because of that easement. So the trees, as you can see, would either be a part of our parking lot, drive aisle, or if you shift the building, open it to part of the building. And I think everything else is just road.
Right.
I'm sure y'all look at all the different options you had as far as locating the parking, the buildings, things like that. Any chance of putting a median in there that would allow one of the pines to remain? I can't recall if that was in a parking area or not.
I was just like, do we have the site overlay up there? I thought I had it, but I've only got that one you all have.
I believe it's sitting in the drainage pond, isn't it? Or is the drainage pond in the easement?
Drainage pond is the,
Okay, and they permitted you to do that. But Dominion did.
yes, yeah, that was a lot of work. I think it's part of why this site's, nobody's really messed with it up. That didn't use it either, but, yeah, so they're going to restructure the power grid there. I'm not sure if they're going underground or if they're going with big hurricane towers, but anyway, pretty soon it'll all bypass that property, so they're a little more convenient for us doing the detention pond to mitigate flooding. And we can plant trees as long as they're under 10 feet for now. So I thought I asked the landscape architect to put in. I've actually had him quote on our plan, we got put in 3-inch, I guess that's the minimum standard, right?
3-inch
No,
caliper.
3-inch stuff, got them pricing out larger trees, we can go ahead and get some bigger trees in sooner.
Okay.
You're talking about larger than 3 inches? Why are you doing that?
There's no shade out there, get a little more canopy sooner.
Okay, well, then, Danny may want to weigh in on that a little bit more, but there's a limit to which you want to size up your tree for coming from the nursery to put in your land
Yeah, I'm leaving that up
in
to
terms of survival. So,
I'll look up to him, but obviously I
okay,
don't want to lose the canopy, the shade, which are out there in a hot
Oh,
parking
yeah.
lot, but I had him draw up the building different ways.
well, we don't have the we would have the landscape plan today. Is that on?
Should be, I've got it here. Well, actually, it's changed. That's this one, these double. Everything along Benton Lodge Road, or sorry, Madison Road, we doubled the density of the
I see.
lower plants. And
Right.
We got rid of a couple of canopy trees and instead added oaks. I think 4 oaks or 5 oaks along up now. Crepe myrtles, and then we have to provide a screen. On Benton's Lodge Road, we didn't do much because of the 10 feet. I think it's
Right.
mostly canopy trees. And then we've got oaks in the back between us and the shopping center as well as crepe myrtles.
Well, we encourage canopy trees at all costs, basically, because that's what it's really all about. But what this plan looks rather dense. And I'm assuming this landscape plan has been approved by zoning department?
Yeah, their only request was to increase the density along Ladson Road. But we actually increased the density on both.
Okay.
And added a couple more oaks. I think we're 30 or 40 feet further oak now.
Is it live oak, or what kind of oak it is?
There's
I didn't,
There's some willow oaks on there.
okay, that's good.
Yeah, well,
It's over the property, but it's,
We got this down here.
these trees are. I asked the same question.
So the landscaping that you've got there, is that just the minimum requirement or have y'all kind of beefed it up a little bit?
and it's actually already been submitted to the town, so this Thursday will be our last
Mhm.
hearing, our last. Our final acceptance, but yeah, the density.
With the DRB? Well,
Obviously, the density increased quite a bit from what's required, I kind of felt like I wanted more anyway, so.
well, we're glad of that.
Which I think is pretty dense.
Yeah,
I
I think it looks good.
Well, the 2 pine trees, although one of them is really pretty magnificent, are in the wrong place. It is in the footprint, so that with the landscape plan approved, by DRB and by zoning, I don't know who makes the final decision on the landscape plan.
I do know.
I mean,
Once they're installed.
I know, but in terms of approval of the plans. Okay, well, I spoke with Tim, so. Anyhow, I don't see any reason to discuss the pine trees that are in the footprint. I believe, planning his zoning administrators conveyed to me that these would be substantially mitigated for. That would be our only alternative to deal with this is if, we cut them down, we need to mitigate, And so it's my understanding that, that's basically been taken care of with the nature of your landscape plan. Anybody else?
Yep, but the only thing I wanted to offer is you may wish to talk with your landscape architect and consider using smaller using 3-inch trees as opposed to larger trees.
Yeah.
Because in truth, a smaller tree is going to acclimate faster. And in 10 years, the canopies will be the same for the most part. So, and if you use smaller trees, a 3-inch tree, I wouldn't go much smaller than 3. But if you use a 3-inch tree, you may be able to plant more trees for the same amount of dollars. And then in 10 years, the canopies will be the same. But that's between you and your landscape architect. It was just a thought.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, you got it back.
Yeah, that's just something, it's something to discuss.
Sure.
But I agree about the trees being in the footprint, and if they're mitigated, no problem.
So I move that we approve removal of the 2 pine trees.
Second.
All those in favor of moving the trees? say
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's just the beginning. Good luck.
All right,
Yeah.
appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you. Is there any other business? Any discussions of any sort? Any questions? The only thing I would make a point that you were gonna make, and I'll just go ahead and make it for you. And that is that when we speak about recommendations
Oh,
for, when we ask someone to have a tree that they're asking to be removed on a basis of health, that they get a qualified arborist to come in and evaluate it, and in the future, we need to be as absolutely, and it was this last time, absolutely as specific as we can during the meeting to convey what we wish to be evaluated. For instance, in the case with the pine tree leaning, whether there was obviously a defect at the base of the trunk, but the request was made by Danny that a qualified arborist actually inspect for rot and the subsequent, if so, effect on the root system. That's hard for someone sitting in the audience to maybe remember if they don't deal in the details of talking about, what's wrong with a tree, since they're not, terribly inclined to know all about trees.
Right.
So we just need to be as specific as we can.
And I did say the words that,
You
you
did,
you
because
need to inspect the
I-
decay, you need to inspect for decay in the root system. But I was talking to a non-professional arborist, so I probably should have been spoken a little simpler and more direct, and made sure that she understood what we were looking for. Because if I had felt that she did understand and just didn't get it done, I would not have voted to remove that tree. Because in my opinion, the tree does not need to be removed, but I just felt like I didn't drive the point home clear enough. And so in the future, I'll make sure that I
Well,
do
this
that.
wasn't a matter of criticism because it was in
No,
the
I
minutes
understand.
and
No, no.
Remy had it in the minutes.
No, I understand. No, it's just, it's a matter of explanation, just
Yeah.
that we all, when we say that, we need to be very clear, make sure they understand what we're looking for. And that if they need, I guess that'll always be in the minutes, Nick, so that if they needed, because these were, we can refer them to that. If you need to know more, if you don't take notes, they're in the minutes and they can look at them.
Right. And the reason I bring this up is because this will continue to be an issue and continue to be. If it's not done, then it just drags out and it looks like we're stalling and when there's not
Right,
enough
right.
information and we really need to be more streamlined about it. And so that's the only thing I have to say. Anybody else have anything they want to say? Do I have a motion?
Motion we, move to adjourn.
Second it? All those who wish to adjourn? Yeah.
Aye.
Opposed? We adjourn. I do.